I'll introduce myself in a sec, but just to kind of point out what we're here to do today, I suppose. And apologies, we don't have any slides simply because we're being recorded. We couldn't see that last week, so excuse me when I'm being prompted and looking into my laptop here. Just remember what we're here to talk about. So I suppose the topic is attracting the best candidates in a talent-driven area. So focusing on what the job seeker does differently nowadays, and what that really means for you as employers. So I've got some data-backed tips and practices, but the whole idea is just to help you get the best quality candidates in the quickest time. That's essentially what we do at Indeed, and I suppose that kind of segues into what do I do at Indeed. So my name is Dylan O'Neill. I'm a manager for one of our small business teams based out of our Dublin office. It's our EMEA headquarters. So my team is client onboarding. So essentially we try and interact with the clients at the earliest stages of them essentially setting up an Indeed account. Really, that's the most basic way we would look at it. So we want to make sure that our clients are set up in the best possible way so they have the best experience from the get-go. So for example, like last week we spoke about top-notch tips for essentially your job descriptions, job titles, and how that impacts the success of your advertising your roles. So my team and myself will obviously communicate this in the best way at the early stages, so we can get people getting their hires quicker, as opposed to having a poor job description from the get-go, having a bad experience, and then having to interact and trying to fix something that's already broken. So that's what I do. So essentially, as an Indeed employee, we help people get jobs. It's plastered everywhere throughout all of our offices. So essentially, I help people get jobs. So we're passionate about the candidate, and that's quite relevant to what we'll talk about today. So everyone who is actually looking for a job has the best experience and the best chance to actually get hired. So without our job seekers, there is no Indeed, and without job seekers, you guys can't find employees. So it's really about a partnership between Indeed, our customers, and then the job seekers. That's essentially the key. About Indeed, a little bit about it. Do you guys know much about Indeed as a product? A little bit, but you know it's a search engine, so that's the most important part. So we're the #1 site in the UK, #1 mobile app in 20 countries, which is quite interesting. One stat I shared last week is that over 50% of our job seeker traffic is now coming through mobile, so that's quite key to what we'll talk about today as well. More specifically to UK, we have 50 million visitors each month, so I mean that's just to show you our reach. If you haven't seen the front page of Indeed.co.uk yet, and we will discuss why we're going to go into that in a little while, as opposed to using Google, let's say, for just one search bar, where you might just search for a restaurant in your area, or a bar, or whatever you're actually looking for. With Indeed, it's slightly different. We have a what and a where box, so inevitably you need to know what you're looking for as a job seeker, and then where you live or where you would like to work. So around this then, our customers are more and more likely to make their decisions based off of what they use a search engine for nowadays. I mean, one interesting thing we look at is like life-changing decisions begin with a search, essentially. So, whether you're looking for a home, you're going to use Rightmove, I think, as an example for the UK. I'm based in Dublin, so Rightmove is new to me. If you're looking for love, use Match.com, or planning a dream vacation, you use TripAdvisor. But these, this is how people. So it's no different. So they're all major decisions that people make, and they're using the search engine to do so. So if you're looking for a job, you're going to do through a search now, as opposed to maybe some of the more old-fashioned ways of looking in the newspaper or so on and so forth. So as an employer, what does this really mean for you? So with that, we want to really talk about being present at the job seeker's moment of truth. So the moment of truth is really when we grab your laptop or your mobile phone or some other wired device, and you start learning about the product or service you're thinking about buying. So whatever that might be. So searches like this obviously happen every day. We're all doing it. So decision making, the same decision making moment happens when you're actually looking for the job itself, if you are looking for a job. So if you're a student, for instance, you might be researching jobs for when you graduate, an accountant daydreaming about, you know, your new career, a nurse scanning over jobs, you know, between shifts, or an IT consultant looking at company reviews. So, I mean, one major point and trend now is to remember that it's a candidates market, so that this is going to be challenging for you as employers. You have to be quite sensitive to this. The ball is in their court, essentially. So research actually shows that job seekers view on average about 30 jobs when they're actually 30 to 33 jobs when they're actually looking for roles. So they're missing out on 99% of the jobs that might be matching the search that they're doing. So how do you stand out in that? I mean, the presentation last week was very much around that and standing out, but today is how you can be present at the job seeker's moment of truth, and just 3 very basic points on how to do this. And it's not a long presentation. I'd like to more discuss these points at the end and see, have any of these, are you doing any of these suggestions, or, you know, is it something that you can adapt for your hiring needs going forward? So, kicking off, the first is create your talent profile. So, the idea of this is stepping back and put yourself in the job seeker's shoes. That's really what we mean here. What are the search behaviors? What motivates people? You know, what motivates people to move towards your organization as opposed to another? So, setting the basic profile, there's a where, how, and what. Very, very basic stuff where you can look. Where are people looking for jobs? So that's naturally the location, the city. How are they looking for the jobs? Are they using mobile devices? But they may be going to job fairs or talent networks. So trying to identify what people are doing. And then what kind of experience will attract them. So to do this, you have to do the research yourself. And it's really quite basic. Doing a simple search on a search engine like Indeed will generally help you with this. So you mentioned you're hiring receptionists, I think you said. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the first thing, if you're approaching it, the first thing I would recommend is going to indeed.co.uk and actually doing a search and seeing how many receptionist roles are actually available in this area. This is your location, so that's your where, but, and the what is your reception, but what are you competing with, and how, why would a qualified receptionist that you would like, why would they find you, how would they find you? So that's an important way to look at it. So to gain this research, to gain this knowledge, I suppose, that's really the first step, is just doing a basic search. But you've got this data really sitting on in your office. Really, what I really suggest is, you know, conducting internal surveys, but maybe not even quite as official as setting up a survey and, you know, sending it to each of your staff members. Talk to your top performers, and I suppose finding out what they would want if they were going to jump ship, which you obviously don't want to think about, but what motivates them. I mean, there's some very basic things around it. So is career pathing a big part of it? Is education? You know, what the values and goals of your company are. But then they'll probably give away some of the, you know, basic information that we want from what we're talking about today. So what are their search patterns? What devices are they using? You know, are they got an iPad? Are they using the phone? Or, you know, are they, you know, opening the newspapers to find a job? It's just interesting. The more people you talk to about this, you'll actually find a trend, hopefully, within it. That would be the idea. Second suggestion is really, smartest organizations naturally get data about their candidates. So Indeed as a company are a very heavily metrics driven company. But we I suppose try to have our clients piggyback off of this. So, you know, we speak about measuring everything. So from, you know, I won't speak too much about Indeed as a product, how we would measure, but we would like, you know, our clients to obviously measure as best as possible. So what I mean by this is, what people are posting. Again, this is very basic stuff. So there's one tool I suggested in the presentation last week. It was Google Trends. So it's a free product. You just simply go to Google Trends. Google Trends. That's probably because the URL escapes me. So around that, the point I was making last week was that if you're sitting on the fence, let's say, with your receptionist role, but maybe job seekers call it a different role. It might be office manager as opposed to receptionist. What trend's stronger? So if you're sitting on the fence, or you're a little bit undecided what the job title might be, which is quite common. It's not a strange thing. We would recommend using Google Trends, because you're just putting two job titles up against each other and pull the metrics for the last month or the last year, the location, London, or even just search UK and see what's working, what people are searching for. And then, as I kind of mentioned earlier on, is searching Indeed as well. Again, just doing a search, it doesn't cost anything, it takes 2 minutes. So with that, you're looking at what other people are looking for. So if the job title is receptionist, but what's in their job descriptions? I was suggesting pinching ideas from other advertisers. You definitely do. I mean, just to sit down at a blank page and writing a job description can sometimes be daunting, particularly for small businesses you mightn't have hired in a year or so. So you're, oh no, I have to do that, and you put it off. But if you start with searching for what other people are doing, just grab a few ideas and tailor it for what you're actually looking for. But then as well, with that searching on Indeed, you're obviously looking at the amount of jobs in your location that match that. It can sometimes be terrifying, so I've got this receptionist role, but there are 10,000 matches for London. So how do I stand out with that? Definitely watch the webinar from last week to solve that. And the third, and I suppose the third and most important point really is for I suppose being present at the job seeker's moment of truth is measuring the impact of your recruitment sources and then making adjustments based around the performance. So when we talk about sources, a source is Indeed, a source is the newspaper, so this is what we mean by this. For larger businesses, our company would generally talk to our clients recommending using ATSs, which are applicant tracking systems. So that's to automate everything for them, so it helps them measure results. But I know that this isn't a viable option for small businesses. You may not have the time to do so. It might be costly. There aren't very many free applicant tracking systems out there, so it's something that might not be a good option. But on that smaller scale, we obviously want to make sure that you are tracking, as manual as it might be, really know where the applications are coming from, and then more importantly, your hire. Because at the end of the day, if you are investing, let's say, money in advertising your jobs, you want to figure out what the best source is and what the return on investment is. So if you're advertising in a newspaper versus a website, which one's working? Should you really use the newspaper, or should you know where it's coming from? So that's going to help you make data-driven, informed decisions. So I'm going to stop talking in a second, but hopefully by using those 3 tips, which I'm going to share some details with you all afterwards, and I'm sure we can share it online as well for anyone who's joined. But hopefully that will help you create your talent profile, get the data about your candidates, and then know what your best sources are. Do you guys have any questions to kick off with?
How much? I guess how much does it cost for a business to advertise via Indeed then?
Well, Indeed, it's a big. My team specifically would take those kind of questions, and we would generally tailor budgets and advise on what product to use around what your needs are. What we can do afterwards, we can have a chat about that specifically if it's something that you're interested in. It would be very, very broad. We don't, not like some of our competitors where there's a fixed price of X amount of money for 6 weeks advertising. the beauty of Indeed is that it's pay per performance. So outside of that, it really depends on what your needs are. So we can catch up on that afterwards. We won't go into the nitty gritty and bore everyone with our but thank you, good question. Did you have a question?
Yes, with the job seekers and stuff, there's a new compliance that if you are supposed to bring in apprenticeships and stuff, the government has fixed some allocation of money that you have to pay to them.
Okay.
From like £3.60 an hour to like £4.50 an hour.
Okay.
Indeed, for your website and everything, when you are advertising for like a traineeship for apprenticeship, do you also do that as well?
Do you mean that? Do you need to disclose the salary when you're advertising?
Salary and the criteria.
It's not a requirement. It's a really good question, and it's quite broad as well. So it's market by market specific. I mean, it's not a requirement from Indeed's side.
Okay.
So it would absolutely be fine. But I mean, when we speak to our clients, we generally recommend that these discussions happen at the time of, you know, maybe not even the offer stage, but when you're, let's say, calling to vet the candidate, that you would disclose that information at that point. I mean, anything around salaries, or if it's generous, it can be a selling point with a job description, but then at the same time, if it's below the market average, you could be shooting yourself in the foot, so you may not have the best experience and you may not get the kind of quality candidates that you may be looking for. So, I mean, again, if that is something that you're looking at doing, if you're, I think you mentioned you are looking to hire some apprentices.
Yeah, but some of the government's regulations, the UK government regulation was to increase the hourly rate of the apprenticeships and stuff, the 16 to 24-year-olds, for them to be given mentoring and training and stuff. With the States Funding Agency, as well as the ACE as well. With the ESF thing, the European Social Fund thing, to take them back to work.
Yeah.
So that was the specification of the UK government.
Okay.
That was my specification.
I mean, unfortunately, my knowledge on that one for the UK market is not quite as strong as out of Dublin. But what we can do is I can give you some advice on that when I speak to some of the advisors back in Dublin, so we can swap details afterwards. We can get into the nitty gritty and that later today or tomorrow.
You guys have one, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I know quite a lot about this area of apprenticeship, so I can advise you on a good training provider, because we've just taken someone on, so.
Okay, thank you for,
No, it's like a minefield, it really is. There's hundreds of these organisations out there. So.
Excellent. Is anyone hiring? You're hiring at the moment. Is anybody else hiring? You're potentially taking on some apprentices. You're hiring.
Yeah.
Oh, before the Small Business Saturday event, is it going to happen?
Well, I guess the challenge is the lead time, and I think that for us that's the and it was quite interesting talking to other small businesses about this, the lead time you need to leave between thinking that we're going to need someone and actually getting someone through the door.
Yes.
Is a real challenge. So if we want someone to start in January, it's nearly November, so it's November next week.
I know, yeah, but this is the time to start putting it out there. I mean, when we speak to our clients, when any of our teams speak to our clients, the hardest part sometimes is setting the expectation, because when you speak to recruiters or managers, they want a hire yesterday. You know, they generally are panicking. Small business, it's not to say that they may not be completely prepared, but there's so much going on. It's really last minute, and they put their job up and they're like, why have I got all of these applications? It's been up for 2 days, you know. So that is, so we try and help set the expectation around that, but that's generally, you know, they're not, owner managers aren't happy to hear that. It can generate, if somebody is in employment at the moment, they might have a month to work out, you know, before, I mean, you know, even for ourselves when we hire, it's about a 2-month turnaround at best.
And just interesting this time of year, does Christmas make a difference in that? We're talking about how to get what people are doing in terms of their behaviour. Are people still looking for jobs at this time of year?
Yep, I know someone who's just been laid off. He's desperately looking for something, so I might need to talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have any metrics around it, which I would love to have, and I could probably get them back in the office. But I mean, I'm putting myself in, like I've just kind of explained, I'm putting myself in the job seeker shoes. It would be probably daunting to try and move just before the Christmas holidays. So in January,
If you're employed
yeah,
now, but if you're not
if you're not employed, you're
desperately
looking
trying
for a
to
job
find the next
anytime.
one.
Yeah.
Well, this time last year I was out of work around this time. I mean, it was my choice to leave where I was. I just hated it.
Yeah.
And it's a nightmare trying to look for a job around now.
Yeah.
I mean, most people aren't recruiting around now, so I'm quite unusual, I think, to recruit around
It's just
now.
temporary jobs they're looking for. Just 6 weeks and off.
Well, I don't know. I was obviously looking for something a bit more kind of permanent at that
No,
stage.
they don't like permanent, they don't like temporary.
Yeah, like just
Christmas.
over the Christmas period. Yeah.
Temporary.
It's very
I mean, it does, it slows down, but there's other trends that kick off in December and November as well. So retail is obviously a massive thing. So, temporary contracts for retail. So, I mean, we're still busy as a company because the trend is different. And then obviously for our larger businesses, their marketing managers are planning budgets for next year. So they're speaking to us and trying to plot that out. And the advice we give on the larger scale, which is interesting, is that most people have it in their head that January is the kick-off month. We come back in January. It's quite quiet for the 2 weeks of January even, so it's.
I think it gets going around.
People have to get their heads
setting
back in the
budgets at the new year, really. I mean, that's been my experience.
Yeah, and so we would generally advise not just saving budget for January because that's what people have in their heads. That's a trend we find. There's no point coming back as a recruiter in January and having no CVs. It's still going to take a few weeks to fish through them and then set up interviews. So you're in January already, and then you're starting interviewing, and hopefully you've got great candidates, and it's a good turnaround time, but you could be March. So, the trend with that would be you're doing the right thing by kicking off now. Like it may not happen until January, but at least you hit the ground running with it. So that's smart. So that's the advice that we give small to medium sized businesses with it. So you're doing the right thing.
We talked to people a lot about this last week because we had the workshop last week about this one this week, and so we've been asking small businesses about this and some of the challenges knowing far enough in advance that you're going to need someone, and then because the small business things change so quickly, I'm really busy, we need someone, let's give it a 2-month lead time. So planning ahead and seeing ahead in your business about what's coming up, and the business is going to get busier, and so we need to think about what we might need. And that is a bit of a challenge, especially if you're quite small, if you're sort of 15 to 30 staff. So you're not a big small business, if that makes sense. but having that, things can change really quickly. And this time of year as well, lots of businesses that we talk to might take on extra staff for the Christmas season. But if you've only been going for a couple of years, you might not know how much growth you're going to see, and that's really tricky. And actually leads on to another question. One of the businesses who wanted to be here today but sat out of town asked me to ask, which was that she's growing her business and is looking for people who are enthusiastic and engaged, but she doesn't want them full time. And so if so the challenge she's finding is how to get really great people. So people who are looking to do stuff but are not looking for 5 days a week. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
I think somebody brought up a fantastic example of that last week around that it was part-time work as well, but remember we were talking last week about there definitely was the helpful part.
Hello,
sorry.
Come and have a seat. Thank you.
Don't sell yourself short. It might be just a part-time position, but you still, like we gave examples of last week, having a great intro in your job description to obviously sell yourself as a company as well. If this is what it was like a part-time position with a full-time attitude. I think it was probably a nice way of saying you're going to work 40 hours a week, but we're going to pay you for 20.
I don't think it's it's an ideal situation. I think lots of, especially dare I say, women with other commitments, whether it's children or whatever. I mean, a part-time position is what they're looking for.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a good. I mean, did you know Karen Masson set up? Is it People Like Us? It's they recruit part-time positions. I mean, I think it's mostly aimed at women, and mostly women with children. I think who used to be quite high-powered, and they don't want any old temp job. They they want to go back, but they want to go back say 2 or 3 days a week.
Wow.
So,
Quite interesting.
And have you seen, I don't know if your experience, because when they were talking about today about behaviour of candidates,
Yeah.
do you see any difference in the way that the women coming back to work in that fashion, how they look for jobs or how they apply for jobs, how they position themselves differently to?
I don't have any data on it, but one trend is huge in the UK, care worker jobs. We have just so many advertisers, clients, I suppose, advertising care worker jobs. So the trend we found with that is that a lot of retired people tend to, it's a generalization I know, but just from speaking to so many of these clients over the last few years, their core staff are people who retire, they're looking for something a little low key, flexible hours, a couple hours a week. That's huge, but the biggest challenge that they find is retention. So talent retention is a massive problem. People will do it for a few weeks. So when we see these accounts, we see these clients, we know that they just have a constant need because the turnover of staff is major. I mean, the example you're giving there, that company that you mentioned, what were they called?
I think it's called something like People Like Us, or I mean, I'd need to Google Karen Madison, and I mean, she's like one OBE or MBs, which I'm not but it's just very high profile in that world.
But it is interesting, you know. And obviously there is
There's
a
a huge
need
market
there.
for part-time staff, and actually that's what a lot of people are looking for. Because if you do your own thing, like say for 1 or 2, say you're trying to launch your own business, it's like you need some bread and butter money coming in. So it's an ideal scenario.
Absolutely. You always have to have external funding down in some grants and stuff. Otherwise,
I mean, for actually advertising that role, I mean, we touched on it last week, just in the, I suppose, aim of being completely transparent. So when a job seeker is using Indeed, for instance, they're typing in whatever the job title is and then where it is. And they're going to just kind of fish down through the search, and certain job titles and the little first couple of lines of the job description are disclosed in the search before you click into the job, say for instance. But if your role is part-time, the advice is basically the advice that we give around that then is putting part-time in the job title. The main purpose of that is that you're trying to cut out the irrelevant resumes you're going to get. So if it's something like a receptionist role, I mean, I can only really speak for our website, but those roles perform outstandingly well on our site, but I'd assume most sources as well. With that, you're going to get inundated with resumes if it's advertised properly, if you position yourself correctly with the right job description, budget, so on and so forth. So you're then going to hit a problem that there's going to be a lot of candidates that may not be qualified, or they may not be interested in the role because they're looking for full-time and they thought it was full-time, but they've clicked in, applied for the job, may not have fully read the job description if the job description actually has it in there. So the job title is the catching point, so having part-time in it will kind of cut out a little bit of time wasting, and on both sides, for the recruiter having to go through all of the candidates, and then it's not wasting the job seeker's time as well. So yeah, full transparency. Be honest, I think was the slide last week.
I think just touching on the male versus female job seeker behaviour, I think we look at more general trends in terms of how people behave. And I think there's the shift to, and didn't touch on the shift towards kind of mobile and how people behave in terms of the way they search. We're seeing so many more people that jobs are so much more accessible now than they were even 10, 15 years ago, when typically people had to use a desktop and they had to get to work and wait till the boss isn't looking. And you can see it. You can see the peaks in traffic. And we've done some studies on how many people actually search, whilst they're at the desk, and it's a significant number. But now everyone's got a smartphone, and people are now actually always searching on the move. And typically, you see people on the train. Everyone is sat there with a smartphone doing something, and having those jobs out in front of people on mobile is critical for any size of organisation, whether you're a small business recruiting one receptionist, or you're looking for 10 people to come in and help build your warehouse operation, whatever it might be. Having mobile access is really important, and that's a trend we see across both full-time, part-time, male, female, CFO down to receptionist. It's like people's behaviour is shifting towards everything's on mobile, tablet. People have to sit at home. They don't sit at home, and then go to the desktop computer in the corner of the living room. They go to the sofa and the TV's on, and they're reading what people are saying about EastEnders on Twitter whilst they're also watching EastEnders happen. And then they've got another iPad in the corner which has got the Ocado shopping list ready to go. Everything is moving so much quicker nowadays.
Do you think, from Indeed's point of view, and I know that maybe this isn't sort of possible because you're an international global entity, but it's very isolating being at work and looking, because it's very hard work as well, and you've got no one to bounce ideas off. And obviously I set up Indeed alerts. I used to use Indeed when I was looking at the beginning of the year, and I think what would be good, and I don't know how this is possible, but if there were some sort of support groups locally that Indeed set up around specific sectors.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, because I think that's really helpful to.
Yeah, we actually do something in Austin, where our US office is. So we are a big, we're a big global organisation, but we're actually not that big outside of Boston. So in London we have 25, 30 people based in London. In France we've got 3 people. In some of our international markets we're very small, but it's something we're starting in the US and we'll roll out, where we actually, it's called Jobs Club, I think, or something like that, which is
it's a target around this.
It's a local.
Committed to X amount of these per year. The number escapes me. I'll be shot because I'm but I think it's 50 to 55 of these events. So depending on the office, obviously there's less. I know for the Dublin office, but we're going to job fairs and essentially with iPad showing people how to do the search. I know it's generally quite self-explanatory, but to kind of point out some of the key tips for job seekers to find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
That's at the core of everything we do. And if you look at, I think if you look at how Dylan talks about how we analyse job seeker behaviour and how we look at what works best for job seekers, it's how we built how I built our business, how 2 people built our business in the beginning was saying, you've got to look at what's best for the end user, and that's when we talk about the journey of search and how people search for jobs today. The best thing for the end user is to have all the jobs in one place with a very simple functional performance. That is why sites like Zoopla have been so successful, Rightmove have been so successful. If you think of what's changed, is people used to go in and search 4-bedroom house in Wimbledon on Google, and now people go in and put Zoopla into Google because specific search engines by industry are so much more popular than Google searching, which gives you such a vast amount of information it's difficult to manage. So I think it's now the shift is now people are looking for specific search engines by product industry, whatever that might be. And that is what's best for the job seeker, and that's why we bring everything into one place, because it makes it easier for them to search. But you wouldn't believe how many people, and that's why we're really passionate about going out and talking to job seekers face to face, is to how to optimise your job search. With the internet's just giving us all this amazing amount of information, but then it makes it so daunting. If you're a job seeker and you sit down, you search receptionist, you have 10,000 roles. Now helping them narrow that down and making it easier for them to apply to the right ones is very, very crucial. So.
And mostly it's recruitment consultants you're dealing with. So I think they handle most of the opportunities out there, in my experience, and they're quite daunting to deal with in their own way as well. Lots of
expensive.
Well, you don't pay as a candidate, obviously, but obviously from a business perspective, it's very expensive.
It's kind of expensive because of the SEO, the SEM, the search engine marketing and stuff that the companies have to advertise and keep promoting and stuff for them to have leads and generate web traffic and stuff. So it's very daunting and very highly expensive.
Yeah.
I tried using one on Facebook. They call it the instant marketing thing on Facebook. And every day, whether you make sales or don't make sales, you have to pay them £300 a day. Just for like 5 hours.
For small business, that's just not.
£60 an hour. I can't afford that.
I think we might have a question.
What you were talking about when everyone's on the commute and they're on their phones.
Yes.
I was thinking about this as well when we were talking. One of the people on Twitter has actually asked. I was thinking of using social media to find staff. Is this a good idea? And if so, do you have any tips? So it's the same kind of idea of everyone's on their phone.
Yeah.
One of the first things they do is probably to interact with their friends.
Yeah,
So is that a way to reach the
well,
right
absolutely.
people?
But as Calvin said, I mean, people are going to the specific search engine answer. They're going to the likes of Indeed. So I mean, we would suggest gravitating towards that. You know, if you're looking for. Looking for love, you go to Match.com. You know, you're not going to Google, you know, successful, good-looking man. You know, I don't know what's going to come up with that.
I think it's important. It is important to have a multi-channel approach to your advertising. You know, we talk about splitting it up into kind of inbound, outbound, and paid, and I think making sure social media is part of that platform is important. I also think it's important to be wary of a buzz around a certain product or site which isn't designed for that function. So social media is a big buzzword at the moment. It's very important, but it's about measuring that success. So if you do invest in social media as a platform to advertise your jobs, and you can go and sponsor pretty much whatever you like through Facebook or Twitter, it's about the measurement of that as a channel, because if you're going to invest in 3 or 4 different channels, you have to make sure you're tracking which one works, because when it comes around again and you go, right, next round of recruiting, I'm now looking for someone else. Last time I spent £500, I recruited someone, but I don't really know where they came from. And that's where kind of get to that point of saying, great, you try a multi-channel approach, invest your budget and split it up across some different channels, test those channels, see which drives the most applications, see which eventually drives the most hires. And when you're talking on a small scale of maybe, you know, one person into an organisation, into a small business, that should be very easy to manage, because you offer them the job, you shake your hand and they say, right, where did you first apply for the job? And getting back to that first source is really key. You want to actually get to the point where they first applied, not where they think they saw the job somewhere along the process.
Because I have a small business as well, so I just think there's some, because it's such a small team and we need people that we can really rely on, there's some aspects of social media where it's kind of a personality recommendation. If it's a friend and someone says, sure, this person would love to help you out, they're really interested in, we do things with photography. So if it's that kind of aspect, I think for a small business it's quite...
Yeah, 100%. It's a viable channel if you can, you know, it's like, and that's what I say, it's about building a multi-channel approach. And, you know, if you've got a network on your social media of, you know, 10, 15,000 people, I know Small Biz Sat have great followings, that's a reach that you can use, and then you can use, it's pay for performance as well, very much like Indeed. So you can pay to promote things on Twitter or Facebook, and then you only pay for performance, you pay when people click. That's the modern way of advertising. The old way is pay and pray, as we call it, where you hand your money over to someone and they say, yeah, thanks very much, I will post this advertisement online for 30 days. And that's what you get from them. You don't get any kind of feedback. They'll say how many people viewed your job, etc., or how many people viewed your advertising, but they won't tell you actually how many people engaged with. And engagement is obviously the key metric that you're looking to achieve.
And you need to do lead building. And get email and subscribe, even if you do job search or even if you Indeed.com, you need to have lead building and also collect email and carry on with the person. For example, if somebody pay interest in your job or in your company, you need to carry on emailing them with your service and what you have to offer, and that's how you can get client and increase your customer base. I'm doing marketing, and inbound marketing and so
Completely agree. I mean, just even on a larger scale, but just to show you, you know, as in, indeed, when we're actually recruiting in-house, obviously we're looking for staff all over the time. I don't have the figure, but most of our staff, I know for the Dublin office, are referrals. Now we're finding it for certain roles where it's taking slightly longer these days to get the perfect candidate, because I think we've just exhausted so many of our networks. I mean, everyone have played their social networks and their friends and family. So that's a huge source for us is referrals. So for small businesses, naturally, it's the same thing. But I just want to show on a large scale, it's still a massive thing. It is for us anyway. And then, as you mentioned, keeping engaged with candidates, you know, they may not have been successful for the particular role that's available at the moment, but keeping them on fire.
That's you.
That's you.
Also going through your LinkedIn network, I mean, that's how I normally do it,
Yeah.
and that's very effective.
I think following on from your comment, and what you just said, it's what we often find is that we, by searching for people, we'll find people that we might want to work with on something else that might not, you know, they're interested in us and what we're doing. They might not be the person for this role, but we might want to do something else with them on it. It could be that we, you know, maybe do a little project with them, or they know someone who might want to engage with us in a different way. And so kind of, and that, I think that's the difference between seeing recruiting as a sort of a flat thing. I'm looking for a person, I find a person, I'm done. As opposed to seeing it as part of your outreach to a community.
Absolutely. I mean, we've just one of my colleagues has just hired somebody recently who interviewed for the role over 6 months ago. Was obviously a great candidate, but there was just one job at the time. Not every great candidate could get it. But we reached out to him. He had to go through the interview process again. He's been successful. We made him an offer, and he's starting in 2 weeks' time. I mean, so it just. Case in point, I mean, keeping engaged with these people, these are talented people, sometimes you just mightn't have the right job for them right now, but it may come up again. So that's going to save you time and money again, so saving you have to go through that whole rigmarole and advertise that job again. If you have somebody just sitting in your inbox and you manage that, you know, crisis averted.
And even though I absolutely hate these questions when people ask me them, I was just thinking, I mean, obviously we've talked about a lot of trends that happened from about 5-10 years ago searching for jobs now.
Yeah.
We started like moving online and looking a little bit like on the trade, etc. What do you think in 5 years, how are people going to search for jobs? What's going to change? I said I absolutely hate these
it's like
questions.
an interview question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Which I think it's so interesting because like 5 years ago it was totally different how people search for jobs, and then I just feel like the world's moving so quickly. Like, what do we need to know?
Not, you know, this is not just a company view, but my personally. So our CEO is a extremely passionate guy from Japan whose whole vision is about kind of how you revolutionise the HR industry, I guess, right, basically. So he looks at it from the, you know, that's why he's CEO and I'm not, is he can see the big picture in like 5 years' time, and some of the things, you know, that we look at, we can only obviously speak on our behalf, but you'll probably see it from a lot of kind of online and .com world, is there's still so many inefficiencies in the processes of hiring and how people actually get hired. You know, people talk a lot about, you know, people still search for jobs when the future should be that the job comes to you, but I don't think that's going to change in the next 5 years, mainly because now we're in a very competitive labour market. So typically finding people is going to become harder and harder. I think people always search for jobs. It's the mediums they'll use to search for jobs that might shift and change. So, you know, like we've seen the evolution to mobile, and we have 55% of our traffic, and that's 60 million visits a month. 55% of that is mobile based now, which is, you think about that as, you know, 10 years ago, it was like down in the 20s. If you look to the Far East, they're in 80% mobile penetration.
Wow.
And you can literally track the map, and we actually have this map where it goes from the Far East back to the UK and then onto the US. starts off at 80% and then just works its way down as you come west. And we're, you know, the UK is still ahead of the US, but it's clear that this kind of mobile evolution here, we think, yeah, we're all mobile, we've all got a smartphone. If you go to, you know, Hong Kong, Tokyo, places like that, the mobile evolution is at a different level. So that will be probably even more prominent, and I think you'll probably see it's not just searching for jobs, it's actually applying for a job online. So I don't know how many people have tried to fill out a form on a mobile that's not mobile optimised. Like the pinching and zooming becomes horrific as you go through.
And we constantly work on that. I mean, the product changes every day, every week. So I mean, in around that, we put our hands up and say there's definitely inefficiencies even with how that works for us at the moment. So we're adapting to the volume of traffic that we're taking.
I think we might say goodbye to our online audience for now. So anyone who's camera shy